Before we begin, the Gamers Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
We are going to talk about hidden gems.
No.
Just another way to get Banana to talk about Andromeda again. My goodness.
He loves it.
Running theme.
That is not hidden, nor is it a gem.
It's a visible turd.
So there's this other hidden gem. It's called Skyrim. And there's a mod in Skyrim called Really Big Trees. So it's a hidden gem.
Right, I'm going to move on and do mine now.
Yeah. Just see me like patiently waiting so that I don't interrupt Legion, and then that's what he says, and I'm just like, speaking of shutting the fuck up.
I'm using that as my segue.
Yeah. No.
Welcome to another Gamers Advocate podcast. Today, every time. Today, we're going to be going over some spoopy. No, I'm kidding. It could be over anything, but we are still going to try to stay within spoopy theme. It is spoopy month. But we're going to go over some hidden gems. GEMS. Not like Earthworm Gem. Hidden gems. And, but
now that's all I
clarification. You know, that classic trope where people discuss guys named James who hide a lot.
It happens. The hide and seek. How to find Jim. And, so there, to give some context, I think Banana and Com already have a good idea of where we're going to go with that. But I'm going to ask a question or two here first, though. Since we are in Spoopy Month, as far as horror games go, are there any horror games that you think you're going to be playing this month? Or at least, if it's not a game, maybe a movie you'd like to see?
I do. It's a movie. I like to rewatch The Ring every year. I think that's one of the movies that actually continues to creep me out. Most horror movies don't. Second time through, I'm normally fine. Sometimes the first time, depending on the quality, and how early it reveals the monster, for example. But The Ring, I don't know what it is, and it's the American remake too, so for you purists, I'm sorry, but the American remake, I think, is an outstanding film, and it gets to me in a way that most horror doesn't, and it does the thing that I mentioned a few days ago, which is it sticks with me when I'm done with it. So I'm gonna watch The Ring. One day I might tell you all my tactic as a child, which to beat the ghost from The Ring, because I did have a tactic. One day I might tell you it all. It's clever. In that child logic way.
Yeah, it's clever for a child.
Yeah, I was only like 17 at the time. I am also hoping to rewatch in its entirety The Haunting of Hill House, which is my favorite horror series. And if I find the time, I am very tempted to finally do another playthrough of the game that I've just forgotten the name of.
Okay, cool.
Alien Isolation.
Yeah.
Alien Isolation. I would love to replay Alien Isolation. Well, that was embarrassing.
I'm really excited about... Oh, fuck.
The thing with the guy, with Jim.
Yeah, finding Jim.
With The Ring, the only way to destroy The Ring would be to make her watch The Ring. And then it's a loop and there you go. It's all done.
She's in a well.
Right, but she has to watch the video. And so then she's the next one to get it, and you pass it on.
She's in a well. How's she going to watch the movie?
It doesn't matter. When she comes out, you make her watch it.
Does
Settle down, dear. Time to watch.
Does The Ring become less scary when no one owns a VCR?
Especially.
I think not, because of streaming services. It suddenly gets a lot easier to proliferate.
Yeah, but are we assuming that somebody would take the time to translate that video, that cassette, to a streaming service?
I believe it's translated automatically by her spirit. I can't believe I'm getting into this.
It's magical.
But I believe it. Yeah, it's space magic, if you will.
Gotcha.
So it's always in existence because she has
classic well witch.
Nano machines, huh? She's got this, this constant desire to spread.
Technomancer of the well.
There's too many midichlorians.
God damn.
Now that you're wearing your Star Trek helmet, stop it. What was it?
God
Star
damn
Trek
it,
Rise of
Jenkins.
Dumbledore.
What about you, Banana? Where you at on that?
So horror's never really been my thing. I mean, I always like the Halloween aesthetic, but the Halloween genre that's like aimed at kids, where it's, you know, playful, gentle stories that involve vampires and zombies and monsters and things, and there's always a happy ending. That's my style. So I'll probably, you know, stick to the classics of watching like Paranorman, which I think is an excellent kind of like family Halloween movie. Things like Monster House, Corpse Bride, you know, the stuff that nobody's gonna get scared of. That's my Halloween tradition.
Okay. You've been playing Get Graveyard Keeper a lot lately, though.
I have been enjoying that. I don't know if there's a horror element or if people would describe that as a horror game. It's dark. There's a lot of morbidity, but I don't know that I would say it's even really creepy. It's just kind of like you're a bit of a monster in that game, but you feel in control.
If I'm going to pick a horror movie that I'm going to watch, I mean, if it's going to be this month, probably The Witch. I love The Witch. It's a great movie. I love everybody in that movie. But, man, that's a good one. As far as like horror games, I might play Silent Hill 2 when it comes out here in a couple weeks. I don't know yet. I mean, I think I've already have it. I think I pre-ordered it, and I think I did. I don't know if I did or not, but I'll look at it. But yeah, if it's one of those that like fires up without, because those games in particular always seem to need a day one patch for them to work well on PC. I don't know what it is. It's like there's a lot of memory leaks and things like that, so they don't really play well until it gets like 2 weeks down the road. So we'll see. But yeah,
I will say, as far as gaming goes, I have been enjoying watching people return to Dead Rising. So I feel like that fits the Halloween, the spooky vibes. I don't feel like that's a horror game. I feel like that's another very playful take on the zombie genre. And maybe that's why it appeals to me. But it's a very fun game. I'm loving watching people who are just now playing it for the first time and people who are returning to it with the remaster. So I'm happy that came out fairly recently.
All right. Well, hidden gems. You got a hidden GEM for me, Banana?
Sure. So I've already brought up, I feel like the two most obvious ones are ones I've already discussed on the channel. The first of those for me is Code Vein. Still kind of fits more or less the spoopy vibes. You're basically vampires. But it's a Souls-like, it's the same publisher as Dark Souls 2 and 3, I think, Bandai Namco, but it's its own kind of spin on Dark Souls. It's an anime aesthetic. Combat is a little simplified. I'd say it plays a bit more like Black Myth Wukong. There's an element of customization, but it's not to the same degree. Excuse me, not to the same degree that you see in Dark Souls, or certainly not Elden Ring. But it's fun and gameplay is solid. There's that learning curve, and once you really get comfortable with it, there's a lot of different ways you can go about playing the game. There's a not a tremendous story, but there's a through line throughout the entire game. There's a narrative there, and it's not bad. It's, I think, solid enough. There's characters and development. And I think within the Souls-like genre, it stands out for me in that kind of, there is that narrative. I think you see it more in like Bloodborne than any other Souls game. Maybe Sekiro, which I haven't played through yet. But the Dark Souls games themselves, they're not super story driven. there is a story, there is a lot of lore that you can look into, but if you're just playing through the game and not going and looking for it, you probably won't get the details. That's not really the case in Code Vein. I feel like with that one, a playthrough is enough to get an idea of what's going on. There's always more to learn. There's always a little more insight you can get on specific characters by putting in extra effort. But I don't think you're going to be asking a lot of questions at the end, like what just happened. So for me, Code Vein is probably my number one hidden gem, but I think we've talked about it on the channel before.
It is one of those games that when you bring it up, I don't hear anything that would turn me off. It really feels like something that would fit the kind of game that I'd like to play. And I don't really have a reason for not having got around to it yet, except for not having got around to it. But it is one that I really, really hope to do. I imagine I would probably stream it, actually. Because it feels like the kind of game that you could have a lot of fun with on that. Does it have a community who seems to be active, like fans of the game?
I don't think so. And I think that's kind of why I would classify it as a hidden gem, is that I don't feel like, even within the Dark Souls community, I feel like when I bring up Code Vein, there are very few people who know what I'm talking about. The people who do seem to have enjoyed it. I don't think I've ever brought it up and had somebody be like, that game sucks. I'm sure that person exists. I just haven't met them yet.
So my first choice, and it is probably the one that I would see as, again, the most worth playing of my hidden gems. And it's from around 10 years ago, and it's a game called 80 Days. So 80 days. And it's based upon Jules Verne, and it's around the world in 80 days. You play the role of Phineas Fogg. Phineas? I always get that wrong. You play Phileas Fogg, and you are attempting to race around the world to win a bet with your trusty partner Passepartout, which is Pass Everywhere. And you have to decide the route you're going to take. So you're going to start in London, and you're going to head across, I believe, the Channel to France. I think you have to start that way, if I remember correctly. And then from that point on, you're in France. So you have to decide, will I go from France to Munich? Will I go from France and head more southwards towards Toulouse or Lyon? Will I head down towards Spain? Am I actually going to try and get from Paris up towards Scandinavia? And every city that you arrive in, the game is a visual novel. So every city that you arrive in, you're going to meet someone. There's going to be a small little interaction. It's maybe going to last 5-10 minutes, tops. They're going to tell you a little bit about where you are. You might have a task. You might have a chance to earn some more money, a chance to lose money, a chance to gain an item that might be useful somewhere later on. And then you have to choose, where will you go from now? And when you think about how this extrapolates out to how many possible choices that you can make, if you went south from Paris, well, now you're going to be taking the route towards Spain and towards Africa before heading around to the east. Well, what if you actually don't go east? What if you try and circumnavigate the globe from south to... by heading south and looping back around from the Arctic? I believe you can actually do that, and I've never done it myself because there's so many ways to play this game. And I think what it really has going for it is it's incredibly sweet. It's a nice experience to play. It's very respectful of your time. It's about 3 or 4 hours long for each run. It's got an enormous amount of replayability for what it is, if that is the kind of game you like. I remember, I think on my 4th or 5th playthrough, that new cities as well open up, new routes, or I just hadn't seen them before, but I think they actually hadn't been open. There wasn't an available route with new events. And it's available, and I think the best way to play it is available on mobile platforms as well. It feels like the kind of game that actually almost... I don't think it was made for it, but it feels like it should have been made for mobile gaming. And I would recommend, if you ever have now a long trip coming up on the plane or on the train, it might be a good way to spend 3 or 4 hours. So for me, my number one hidden gem that I think people should play is 80 Days.
Okay. If I'm going next... Hi, Kiki.
Thanks.
I always think it's a typewriter.
But it could be Kiki on the typewriter. So
It's not. I don't own a typewriter.
That's what he wants us to think.
The channel lore. Kiki writes the scripts for us.
That's correct.
So.
That's what I want you to think, because I don't own a typewriter.
Yeah, Kiki comes up with all the jokes, all the scripts.
Yeah. My ghostwriter / pet.
Yeah, to be clear, if a joke doesn't land, it was us.
Yes. Kiki has never told a bad joke. That's
We've
a
never
fact.
told a good one.
I think it's, I keep talking about this game from time to time, but it's in some circles it is not a hidden gem, but every time I bring it up in most circles, it's a hidden gem. So it's gonna be Pumpkin Jack. I love Pumpkin Jack, and it's not just because it's a spoopy theme that we're going over, but I mean, it definitely has a lot of those aesthetics. The style of that art is pretty good. I love that ghostly purple, that ghostly green, and it's just got it in galore in that game. You have you have some combat. It's a kind of almost, and it's not a platformer, but you're definitely going up on some verticality issues, and you're solving puzzles while you're doing stuff in an action mode, and so it really is neat. I know there's a lot of sometimes there's those speed runs that try to raise money for things, and they include that one in that because it's a fairly linear game. Just has a lot of like mechanics that lends itself to the speed running stuff without doing exploits and things. So I think that one's a really great game. It's a lot of fun. It's not the same thing over and over again. The bosses are very different. You have to fight them differently. They always have like a certain you can fight them conventionally. It just take you longer. They always have like certain weaknesses that you can exploit. So I don't know. To me, it's almost like a combination of like Super Mario meets Zelda in a way, just in an action style. So it's a lot of fun.
All right. Okay, good. Ooh. It's close. Maybe we can one-shot this. Nope. All right. Yay! We solved it. Sure. Smaller section. Okay. Okay. No, Jack, what have you done? See, I just need to do that one thing.
So you are the pariah, the champion that the devil himself has sent for me. Frankly, I'm disappointed.
Show yourself, you coward.
I don't think so. I'm already long gone. I always stuck around steady to fight, to steady your fight and my associated demands. Very enlightening. You really do put on a show.
We gotta get up there from here. All right, there we go. Yeah. Hold your horses, Jack. What? What am I holding for? All right.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some speed run play of Pumpkin Jack, and I think the appeal for speedrunners is that there's that kind of elements of consistency in terms of what you're going into. It's not a lot of random number generator or anything like that where it's a randomized pattern. It's a lot of very predictable things, and it lends itself to speedrunning in that regard of if you just practice the mechanics and recognize the patterns as they present themselves, you can do very well. And I agree. It's aesthetically a very appealing game.
So I was just looking up, I was trying to find out who the designers of it were. And I'm just getting a name rather than a studio, which fascinates me. So it looks like it was a solo project. Pumpkin Jim.
Wouldn't be shocked. Would not be shocked. I think it's made on.
Oh, it has that feel when you play.
Yeah, because it's made with the Unreal Engine, so a lot of those things with the, if you have access to, I think it was made Unreal, not like Crate or the way they do things. But yeah, I mean, if you know how to do that stuff, a lot of things the engine does itself, and you just put your creative design behind it. So
yeah, no, I work with the Unreal Engine a little bit. It is incredible what you can do. I'm just looking. It's a French developer, Nicolas Meissonier. And I've not heard of him, but that's fantastic. Well done. I find it quite heartwarming when I see a European game studio doing well, especially a small one. It's not always easy to start up over here, so that's nice to see.
Yeah, there's this little one called CD Projekt. Maybe you've heard of them.
They're not from here.
It's that Eastern Europe.
Are they based in Poland, CD Projekt Red? So yeah, I think they're based in Poland. I understand that Poland actually, from what I understand, has something of a thriving video game development scene.
Yeah, the guys at CD Projekt, the original guys, have a very long history with BioWare actually. Anyway, there's an Easter egg with the actual co-founders of CD Projekt. They're in the game. They're selling these BDs or those. It's a movie that you can replay in your senses. Anyway, they sell things out of their van, but that's actually how those two guys got started, is that they were selling kind of basically like shareware out of their van to people in Poland. And when Baldur's Gate came out, they helped to translate a lot of that stuff to make it more local for the people there. And so BioWare worked with them to do that instead of just letting them to do the pirated stuff. And so that's why there's a lot of like merging of the minds when it comes to some of those titles between The Witcher, which uses the Neverwinter Nights engine from BioWare, the Aurora engine. They had access to that stuff because they had helped them in the past. So
now, does Banana have a second hidden gem for us?
I actually did come up with a third, which is good because I don't know if my second one qualifies. So for
Final
me,
Fantasy 9.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3. For me, the second one I thought of was Vampire Survivors, and I don't know if that qualifies as a hidden gem. Everyone I have spoken to about this game who knows anything about it seems to have really enjoyed it. I don't know if it, because of the kind of marketing behind it, I feel like it's maintained a smaller reputation than it probably deserves. I think it's not a tremendously new kind of game. It's not, blowing anybody away in terms of what they're trying to do. I think it's just a game that had a very simple goal, but went about doing it very, very well. It's essentially just a bullet hell game, with a kind of Castlevania aesthetic. And it works. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of, it can be described, I guess, as very repetitive. You do the same thing in every level. But it has that kind of roguelite element of kind of getting random equipment. You, of course, get to choose from a set, but what options are available to you are kind of randomized every time you level up. And I think it's just fun. That's really the best way to describe it. It's nothing too complex. It's not something I need to explain very much. I think if you have the chance to play the game, you'll load into it and you'll immediately know what you need to do. But I think it's just really well done, and I'm a huge fan. I've put way more hours into that game than I needed to get all of the achievements, which is kind of like my thing. I just kept playing even after I got everything. I unlocked all there is in that game and kept going because I enjoy it. So for me, that's definitely a gem. I don't know if it's hidden.
I think, we probably can't call it hidden. I believe when it first came out, we probably could have, because I think it had something of a slow burn, and it was really, I started hearing of it in the last sort of 6 months or so, Maybe the last year might even be more fair. But at the same time, we are gamers, so to speak. So of course we're aware of it. I wonder how much traction that ever got outside of people who are into gaming to the point that we will make a podcast about it. People who are into gaming to the point that you will listen to a podcast about it. So it's not AAA in any sense. It wouldn't have had an advertising budget. Maybe hidden is a bit of a stretch, but there are people who won't know of that, who probably will love it. I've only seen people play it. I know a few friends of mine who really wanted to give it a try and then got more into it than I expected. And there's a lot to be said for a game that's just fun. There is a time and a place for games that push somewhat, whether that be narratively, whether that be in terms of new mechanics, whether they are a challenge in the sense of interpreting them, in the sense that they're trying to send a message of some kind, whether they're difficult in the sense of just physically being difficult, like they're a pain to play. And there's a place for games that is just fun. And I know one of the games that I really enjoyed, and it's not my hidden gem, but it's just going off the back of this, I really enjoyed Rogue Legacy when that came out. And what I really enjoyed about Rogue Legacy was it was quite hard, but it was just fun. You pick it up, you pick up the controller, and you can go 5 years between playing it. And within 5 minutes, you know exactly what you were doing. Because it's simple, it's intuitive, and it's just a pleasure to play. And the impression I get is that Vampire Survivors it's called, is just a pleasure to play. Yep. People just enjoy it.
That's exactly it. And that fact of, stepping away from a game for 5 years and coming back to it, not wondering, like, what was I trying to accomplish? What do I need to do next? I feel like that's a struggle that almost every gamer can relate to, because we've all played one or two games that like that, where, we took a break from it, we got distracted, real life got in the way, whatever it was. And then we came back to it and we were like, I have to start the entire game over again because I have no idea what's happening. I am completely lost. And when you have that experience with a game that you've sunk 60 hours into, and then you have that step away, come back, fuck, I have to start over again. That is devastating. That's how you end up from going from like, oh, I haven't played this game in a few months to I'm never playing this game again.
I mean, and how often is that the end, right? For me, Final Fantasy 12, I've never finished it because at one point I was about 30 or so hours in, and then either life got in the way or maybe I was just bored for a few weeks and didn't want to play it. And then by the time I came back to it, I opened it up. And it's a game where, notably, you have to pay attention to the story because it's not really happening to you. You're happening around the story.
Right.
And I remember loading up and thinking, right, well, I know who we are. I remember the party members' names.
Yes.
Motivations. That's a bit vaguer. And where the hell is this?
Yeah.
And there was that realization of I'm going to have to start again. And I wasn't prepared to put that in. So having a game like Vampire Survivors where you can just stop and restart is a joy.
I feel like Vampire Survivors falls into one of those categories of games that I would say are great for streamers or let's plays, where people can have conversations that aren't relevant to the game. You can discuss general gaming discussions, or you can just talk about whatever is being discussed, and you can still kind of have an idea of what's going on in the game. There are other games that I feel like are not made for streaming. They're made for single player, offline, full focus playthroughs. And Final Fantasy 12 is definitely one of those. I think I played that on stream, and there are without a doubt moments where I'm like, okay, I know we're in a cinematic and this is supposed to be a big deal, but I don't know who anyone on screen is right now. And like, that was absolutely me screwing up and not being able to retain that information because I wasn't focused enough while playing through. But I think the fact that I was streaming it at the time didn't help at all, because I would like respond to messages in chat and then they'd introduce a new character and I'd be like, oh, well, he looks exactly like 7 other people I've met, but he's very different apparently. He's got his own motivations and a name. I'm sure he probably has a name. I don't know what it is. There was a lot of that in Final Fantasy 12. There's none of that in Vampire Survivors because I don't care and it doesn't matter. I don't need to know anybody's name.
And that is specifically it. You don't know and you don't care. And actually, you don't want it. It's something that will hurt the game. I don't need it.
Every playable character in Vampire Survivors has a name. I know of like 5 of them. Because almost every other character also has a unique starting weapon. And that's the decision that I'm making. Is like, what weapon do I want to start with? Not what cosmetic am I putting on my character that's navigating this world. Because that's really all it is. There are kind of like passive effects that go with each character, but they don't dramatically change the experience. So for me, it's just like, that's a pretty sprite. I'm going to go with that one and use that weapon.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what their name is. Doesn't really even matter what their passive ability is.
You know what I'm
Just
doing in the
gonna play
background? I am adding this to my wish list. It sounds exactly like what I'm looking for sometimes. I think this might actually be a hidden gem. It may not be that well known except to members of a specific community. Obviously. The game, I hate that
very small community.
Yeah, right. Oh no, but like active chatters were not many. So, the Discord is it's a different kind of place. So the game that I'm going to choose for, well, I'm lost. That I'm going to choose for my second hidden gem is published by Goldhawk Interactive, and it's called Xenonauts. Now, Xenonauts is a spiritual successor to the classic XCOM games. So this was created around 2012, 2013 when the remake was coming out. And this would have been based more for gamers who wanted the original XCOM game, but updated into the modern day. So we're looking not really for a change in the way the gameplay is played, but we're looking for quality of life improvements. We're looking for nicer graphics. We're looking for more intuitivity in the gameplay. XCOM was a traditionally very, very punishing game, and you could even be punished for just forgetting things. I can remember quite a few times, especially as a kid playing it, forgetting to equip weapons on my soldiers just because I thought they were already on there. Or just because they were on a previous mission and I didn't realize that I had thrown the weapon at someone by accident because the throw button was... that kind of thing. So Xenonauts exists as a spiritual successor to the original XCOM games, and it is incredibly well done. They decided to add a bit more story to the world. So instead of just a very plain geoscape, they called it in XCOM, just a plain world canvas on which you fight these aliens, the world of Xenonauts takes place in the Cold War. So you have this, it's a bit surface level, but this balancing of tensions between what you might just loosely call the west of the Iron Curtain and the east of the Iron Curtain, and trying to find a way to bring these powers together. It mainly personifies itself in aesthetics, the way the game feels. So you have a retro sci-fi feel to most of the game. The combat itself is pretty directly taken from the original XCOM, but they do add in also an air combat feature as well. And it's just a game worth playing. Do I think it's as good as the remake of XCOM? No. No, because I think that is one of the most excellent strategy games that has ever been made. Do I think that anyone who's played the original XCOM should try it? Hell yes. If you have tried the original XCOM and that game spoke to you and you enjoyed it, I think Xenonauts is a game that you will more than likely really, really adore. It's around 10 years old now, so you can tend to get it fairly cheaply as well. And if not, I'd imagine it probably goes on sale every so often. I have to admit it's a game I don't check that because I already own it. But it is a game I would really recommend that you do play. So my second hidden gem is Xenonauts.
I kind of thought I got that crossed with Psychonauts. I'm like, Psychonauts?
I think when it came out, it had something of an Outer Wilds, Outer Worlds situation with Psychonauts.
Just off the top of my head, it's a game that I enjoy. It's one of the early PC games that I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I kind of thought it was more of a shareware at the time, so I didn't have high expectations of it. But it's called Sanitarium. And Sanitarium is definitely, for those late 90s, early 2000s, I think. Can't remember exactly when. But yeah, it's got the hand-drawn background. It's got the interactive objects. It's got a lot of themes that it deals with. I do think that there's some wrestling slash superhero stuff that's thrown in there because it's all part of this like mental confusion that he has. So he gets a lot of the things of his past, mixed up with what he was studying, and it's all kind of convoluted, and it has a direction, but it's a really, really great hidden gem in that if you like retro and you like puzzles and you like a great story, I mean, it's all kind of right there. There are some technical glitches just because, like I said, the hand-drawn art blends in so well with some of the things that you need that part gets but for the most part, it's a great game. Mm-hmm.
I believe it's had a handheld re-release.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's usually pretty cheap. It's like $2 or something if it's...
Is there a game that you could compare it to?
Ooh. If you like, I guess... I hate to compare the Monkey Island games because graphically they're not the same. But it's in that same, like, find this, do that, put this together, and then there's story in between. There's a dialogue in between. That whole, like, basic concept, it's in that same idea. Yeah. That's
interesting, because that's not the connection I would have made, because I played this a long time ago, and the main thing I remember is the viewpoint, which I think is the isometric. So in my mind, it's associated with that family of games, not playing like them, but like Baldur's Gate, like Icewind Dale. But I think Monkey Island actually might be a much better comparison, despite the lack of service level.
Yeah, it's not technical, so yeah.
Do you like it here at the circus?
Yeah, this is a real paradise. Maybe when I get done talking to your dumb ass, I'll go have a martini by the pool.
You sure do cuss a lot.
So, what are you gonna do? Tell my mommy? Oh, dearie me, whatever shall I do?
That balloon looks silly on your head.
Oh, does it? Thank goodness you were here to tell me that. Whatever would I have done without your keen powers of observation?
You're mean. Shut up.
Get bench, you little runt.
Looks like a barn.
Transforming them into simple plants? You call that salvation?
Simple plants! Insolent meat! You know what your problem is. You lack structure. The cells in your body are practically floating away. It makes me sick to look at you. Everything around you is in chaos. My form is superior in every way to your weak flesh.
There! The children are free of you!
Thank you for freeing us, Max. Now that Mother is destroyed, the children are slowly returning to normal. They've all gone through the tunnel to join the rest of the world. I waited for you.
Yes, but where are we going? The asylum? How did I get back here? Those children seemed so real. Did I save them, or am I going completely mad? Excuse me, what's your name?
Are you serious, man? I'm the king.
King of what?
King of rock and roll, man. I'm Elvis.
The Elvis? But I thought you were, well, you know, dead.
Oh, that was all a hoax, man. Pressure was getting to me. I needed a break.
when you think of games like Baldur's Gate, I mean, we would put games like I can't remember that name of that modern police game that's really good. Disco Elysium just came into my mind. Yeah. So in my mind, that's also a sort of Baldur's Gate type game, even though it has nothing in common with them.
Yeah, Disco Elysium is a very mood. It's similar, I guess, to Sanitarium in many ways, but not, yeah.
You know, it was just showing that the commonality between that and Baldur's Gate is really just the camera
perspective.
Yeah.
There was one more that I thought of that I unfortunately think has not been ported to another system since PlayStation 1, which means it's going to be even harder to play. For me, that game it's called Heart of Darkness. It has nothing to do with the novel.
Okay.
But it is if you're familiar with Out of This World, which was I want to say Nintendo era, Nintendo Entertainment System era game, maybe 1993, pretty much entirely conceptualized and then developed by one person. I think there was a small studio around him that supported it, but I believe it's all Eric Chahi basically developing the entirety of the game, directing everything. Heart of Darkness is the follow-up that has its similar gameplay elements. It's not connected in story, but they took advantage of the improved technology, enhanced graphics, added cinematic sequences that are way more pretty, to put it simply. But it's a kind of action puzzle platformer kind of thing. It's, again, just really fun. It's really difficult. It's a pain in the ass to beat, but it's fun all the way through. There are definitely moments where I remember getting frustrated of being like, there's no way a human being can react in time, and a lot of it is driven by random number generators, so there are times where it's genuinely impossible to succeed because of what you've been dealt. But you'll just reload from a checkpoint and then you'll get a different version of that sequence, and maybe you can succeed there. But it's a fun game. You follow kind of unlikely hero who has a bit of a nerd. I believe he starts by inventing a little like ray gun thing, and then that kind of quickly gets taken away from you, and you get gifted this other power that kind of replaces your little ray gun. But it's got a cute little story to it and just fun gameplay. I want to say that was 1998 and has not been ported to anything else.
I've just been taking a look at it. It looks very familiar. I do wonder if this is one of those games that maybe appeared on a demo disc somewhere. Maybe I've played the first half an hour of. There's something about, for myself, that I really love about some of those games from that era. The other one that came into my mind was Oddworld, which when I looked at this, Oddworld immediately came into my head as I was looking up screenshots. And there's a real charm to those PlayStation 1. They're not really platformers, are they? They're more adventures in a platforming perspective.
Yeah, there's a very small element of platforming to the game, but it's not the focus. It's much more of an adventure focused game. If I remember correctly, the subtitle for Oddworld was Abe's Odyssey.
Yes.
So it's very much focused on that kind of like, it's an adventure game.
Yeah. But it's a very charming style that I think it probably has had its day in the sun, and we probably are not going to see it again. But whenever I see something like this, it actually just pulls me back a little bit, and I feel a little bit like the kid on the couch playing a PlayStation controller without analog sticks. Like they're really, and that's the feel that game gives me. It's very much of its time. And
I would say that's absolutely it. That PlayStation 1 cartoony aesthetic, where they weren't trying to be super realistic, but they were taking advantage of the improvements in the technology to be a little more realistic and a little more cartoony at the same time. That's like very much a callback to mid 90s, late 90s kind of gaming, and it definitely carries that nostalgia with it.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be very nice, because I'm just looking now, just casually in the background, because I know this is a thing that Sony have on their console, on the PlayStation. They have the PlayStation Plus, and this allows you to get games like Xbox Game Pass, so you don't own the game, but you loan it essentially for as long as you have a membership. And I know that they have PlayStation 1 games on there that you essentially stream to your PlayStation. I would love to see almost a mini collection of these similar style of games. Put them in a small little collection and give me Heart of Darkness, give me Oddworld, and let me play that style of game in one place. I would absolutely adore that. Hidden, I think, works for this. Now, there was a time when it was quite well known, again, amongst a quite specific community, which would have been strategy game players, 4X game players. And this game was well known enough at the time that I think it was actually Game of the Year I think it was Rock Paper Shotgun had it as their Game of the Year back when it came out. And it's Endless Legend. Now, this is a 4X strategy game, which for me often raises a few eyebrows. It's not necessarily my favorite thing. I do enjoy playing Civilization. I do enjoy Alpha Centauri, for example. They have a place. But it's hard for me to want to play something new in this genre, because I think Civilization does it so well that anytime I play a 4X that isn't that, I just find myself thinking I could be playing Civilization right now. So you've got to do some heavy lifting. And they did something really, really interesting, where first of all, they just made a beautiful game. And for me, there's a lot to be said for a game being beautiful. And this is where Persona 5 got me. I don't think I've ever found a game where the menus were that stylish as they did Persona 5. So as the game was trying to get its hooks into me, they gave me stylish music, stylish menus, and I gave it a chance. Because you gave me that great first impression. Endless Legend does that. It's a beautiful game. Very stylized, but beautiful. And they did something different that I appreciated. So what I don't tend to like about 4X games is eventually, no matter how many races you give me, or cultures, or whatever it might be, I lose a bit of interest because they, to a degree, feel the same. Now, they do encourage you to play in different ways. If you're playing as Korea, for example, you're encouraged to go down the science route. In Civilization, if you're playing as England, you're encouraged to build ships to reflect that British Empire naval dominance. In Endless Legend, the factions definitely aren't the same. It's completely asymmetric. You have factions that are objectively worse than others, factions that are objectively better. There's the resources in the game, and I can't remember the names, but let's say food, production, power. One of them doesn't need food because they're not alive. And this is such a bizarre thing. The entire purpose of a 4X game is balancing these resources against your opponents, and one race just doesn't use them. They just don't care. It doesn't matter. And they grow and spread through conquest, and that's all. So the game is genuinely different for each faction. As well as that, each faction has a narrative that you play, so there are story events popping up throughout the game. Your individual heroes that you have for your factions, so you have hero units, they have their own quests and storylines. So you've got those little narratives that keep you playing through the game. Because I don't know about you, but when I play Civilization sometimes, I find myself mid-game just clicking end turn as I wait for the next research thing to finish, or as I wait for my army to arrive where it's going. And this, particularly in multiplayer, can be the kiss of death. Because if one player has a lot to do that turn and you've just clicked end turn and you're sat around waiting, it can really turn you off. I think Endless Legend keeps the game interesting until, and this is the problem I always have with 4X games, until the end game. I've never played a 4X game where I like the end game. I always find they become a bit clunky. They become a bit of, if you've ever played Monopoly with your family, you know who's winning after about 20 minutes. And now you've just got to play for another hour until they eventually win. And it's just a relentless march towards what essentially feels predetermined. And it does suffer from that. If someone's winning at the 2/3 point of the game, they're going to win the game, as it feels in Civilization. But as 4X games go, it's unique, it's beautiful, it's asymmetric, it's interesting, and it's a rival to Civilization, which I think is something the genre actually needed, especially at that time. So my second, is that third? My third hidden gem, would be Endless Legend. And it is very much worth playing even in 2024.
I think I don't know if I just looked through really quick. I have a little Discord bot that announces when specific games are free on Steam or Epic or Good Old Games. And I just checked to make sure it wasn't in that list. But I did get Endless Legend for free somehow. I can't remember how. It might have been Prime Gaming, something along those lines. But I do have it in my library, and I will be playing it eventually, I'm sure. Now
Definitely
I have motivation to play it. Because I knew nothing about it. I just knew that it was free. And I was like, add to library.
I think the studio does this. I think it's Amplitude Studios. I think they do it from time to time. Because I've got Dungeon of the Endless and Endless Space, which are two other of their mainline titles. And I know I've never paid for them either. Mm-hmm. So I do wonder if maybe they do Humble Bundles or Prime Gaming, whatever it might be. To the point that you might even just have it in your library. If you do, it's worth a try.
So if we've done 3 apiece, I haven't done a third. I didn't know we were doing 3, but I can definitely bring one up. If you like Stardew Valley and that type of thing, I know Banana's been playing Graveyard Keeper a lot. My issue with Graveyard Keeper, I really enjoy it. It's just there are quests galore. It always seems like I can't get anything done that I want to do because I'm doing all this other stuff for, one collective reason. So I get confused with that. If I don't play that regularly, it's just not going to happen. But there's a different game, and I love tavern games. I don't know what it is. I'm a sucker for every single tavern simulator out there. But there's this one called Traveler's Rest. And it's in that Stardew Valley style. It's pixelated type game, but it's focused enough that if you just really wanted to build up your tavern, now you can grow your own crops. It's like I said, it's very Stardew. And it's still in early access, but they've been adding more and more stuff to where it's more like quest stuff that you can go do. But it seems to be a little bit more like, well, what do you want to do? How do you want to play this game? And I don't know. I think that one's not. I don't see that one as propped up as many other games that are very centrally themed. But that one I think it doesn't get noticed as much because it's kind of considered more of a tavern game. But that's just really one aspect. That's kind of where you start. But yeah, Traveler's Rest. It's a pretty good game.
Is it more of a management game?
You can have employees. And a bunch of, but as an example, like you have a magic broom. You don't have very many magic things in this game, but you have a magic broom that at least kind of like will clean up for you when the spills and things occur. But yeah, you can hire employees. They don't really do much. They just basically serve drinks or clean tables or cook or something like that. But yeah, you have to tell them, go home. Otherwise, they're still on the clock taking up your money, and so there's some elements of management, but not a lot.
And what about, because it was the thing that I found very endearing about Stardew Valley, is technically you are trying to run a profitable farm, but it's so simple to do that you can actually just go off and have fun. You can do the other things in the world and you can get by doing the bare minimum. Which I would encourage people playing that game to do. Just do enough on the farm so you can go and enjoy the world. Is it that
It's exactly
kind of
that.
So
yeah.
it's
yeah,
perfect. Okay. There was an interesting phenomenon which I've noticed recently, and it was hearing about this now from you and hearing about another game that came out a few weeks ago. I think it's early access. It's Fields of Mysteria or Fields of Mystria. Sorry, which is another similar game to Stardew Valley. And it just made me have one of those moments of realizing my age and my lack of being tapped in to the culture of video gaming, because in my mind it's not a Stardew Valley type game, it's a Harvest Moon type game. And I wonder at what point Stardew Valley became so, and it deserves everything it gets, it's incredible. I'm wondering at what point it became so impressive and so omnipresent that these games ceased to be Harvest Moon alikes and they became Stardew Valley alikes.
I don't know. I mean, because there's definitely a more rise in pixelated games, just period. Whether they're platformer style, like I think it was, what was that one that just came out, Pets? But yeah, there's been a great surge in the pixelated games, and probably a lot of that has to do with Stardew. Whether it actually follows the formula of Stardew is not the point. It's interesting to see that pixelated come back for some reason.
Well, I wonder how much of it has to do with how relatively easy
True.
it is to make a video game. Or it's not easy to make a video game, but how accessible it actually is. With the availability of things like Unreal Engine, Unity as well. If you're making games with Python and Pygame, it's going to be a bit harder than those two. But you do Game Maker. You have all of these possibilities where you can make a game. And if you are someone who's going in, making a game as more of a passion project, and you weren't a developer before, you don't have this background in software engineering, you don't have a background in art, you don't have a background in music, it lends itself to these simple art forms. It lends itself to pixel art. It lends itself to MIDI music. And I think it might just be a sign of how wonderfully open the world of game development actually is, and I don't mean this to make it sound like game making is easy, because again, it's incredibly difficult, but how low the bar to entry is, how low the bar to starting a project is in video gaming. And then I was thinking of games like what would have been one of my hidden gems, but it wasn't quite in that top tier, which was games like Prison Architect when that came out. The real beauty of that was in, I think, the way its systems interlaced, the way that they gave you the sandbox to play in, but also it had a really cute art style, which was very, very simple, but really
you could shank a prisoner, but in a cute way.
Yes. Yeah.
And that game is called Animal Well. I looked it up. It's called Animal Well. Check it out. It's actually a really neat game. So,
still haven't heard of it.
No, me neither. I was trying to
look it up. Look it up. Yeah.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. I'll post a picture of it. But yeah, no, that one definitely has some good reviews and stuff. But yeah, no, I agree with you. Prison Architect, a lot of those games, and I've been playing one called Norland. That one's a lot of fun, but it's in that same.
I think I've heard of that.
Where like there's so many interactions between the different people that are there, and they all have different personalities, which causes this whole like, well, this person would never try to break out of his cell, but because he was with Charlie, who's a notorious guy who likes to get out, well, that's how he got out. You know, there's all these like little complex things that goes on. So,
Well, that's why I think it's very, very interesting that in the last few, possibly years at this point, that re-release or mainline release of Dwarf Fortress was lovely to see. The fact that they were able to get that game out there. Because, I mean, if you want, and I've never really played it, it was always a bit inaccessible with the ASCII graphics and so, but I think it's going to be interesting, or maybe could have been, maybe that time has passed, to see whether that could have got some slightly more mainstream adoption. Because it's a very niche game. As incredible as it is, it's very niche.
And you know, you mentioned that one. Another one that I would not say is like an outlier or anything, because it's already like time has gone by, but Dungeon Keeper did some really interesting things way back in the day, because you got to play the bad guy. You were trying to keep out heroes. I love that. So, yeah.
It's a very simple idea, isn't it? Just flipping that one mechanic on its head. But Dungeon Keeper was incredible. I believe there was a game that came out recently that's very similar to Dungeon Keeper, and I can always have a look for the name later and put it in the description if necessary. But I think it's a shame that oddly enough never really resurfaced, because it's an interesting idea, but Dungeon Keeper already did it very well. So maybe we think that there wasn't much to improve.
Yeah, if you haven't played Dungeon Keeper, I mean, it's an old game. It's hard to love at this point, but it's unique. You know, you have like these little torture rooms and things, so that way keep things in check.
Really selling it.
But yeah, you can put out traps. You can almost kind of like, if I remember right, you could do like almost a Heroes of Might and Magic style. Like if you built a certain thing, then certain monsters could come out of that thing, but you had to like get the resources.
I believe so.
So that was neat too. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did have one more. I, again, don't know if this quite qualifies as hidden. It's definitely a gem. Nobody Saves the World.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. This came out 2 years ago. I want to say, for me, in my mind, it's a hidden gem, because I don't think I've ever talked to anybody about it. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone else playing it. I've never seen anyone stream it. Granted, I'm not scouring Twitch for people playing this game. But it's a very clever, fun RPG that I think ties back to a lot of the elements that made the original Zelda games fun. It has that kind of puzzle solving element, not in the same way that Zelda does, but that same, you've learned a new ability, figure out how to use this to navigate to new areas of the world now. And I remember playing through the game and just thinking like, this has all of the solid features that I would look for in this kind of, it's not turn-based. It's very kind of like combat occurs in the world that you're normally navigating. So there's no harsh dividing line between the combat world and the just kind of wandering around. It was fun. It was interesting. There were, fairly clever puzzles, if I remember correctly. It has been a while since I played this game, but I do just remember thinking like, it was a game I played all the way through, then went back and did all of my achievement hunting, and I never got tired of it, that's an impressive feat for a game, for me to go through the entire game once, return to it, and grind out the remaining kind of like optional side quest kind of things, and still feel like, yeah, I didn't get tired of that game. I'm not bored having played through that extra challenge that they gave me. So yeah, for me, that's definitely a gem. I think looking at it on Steam, it's very positively reviewed.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the absurd number of reviews that you'll see from very, very popular games.
Yeah. We could probably go through this for 4 more hours, probably, as we start thinking about it more and more. If you like The Witcher, there is a I hate calling it a text-based game, but it kind of is. If you like Choices Matter, you like The Witcher, and you don't mind reading, so this is not a streamer-based game. I mean, it's your voice. I mean, you can read all you want. But it's called Road Warden, and you basically, just from the moment you walk up to the first fort, it gives you options. Do you want to talk to these two? Do you want to observe them further? Do you want to find a different access point? Do you even want to go into this fort? Things like that. From the very beginning, your choices matter, and that's one that, if you don't mind the reading, Road Warden, and you want kind of like a Witcher-based story guy who's on the road, that's his living, is kind of not killing monsters, but keeping the people safe.
My Steam has been listening, because I just fired it up, and my top 3 sale recommendations are Nobody Saves the World, Animal Well, and Norland. Haven't heard of this before today. I have one last one, and just like these last 2, it's more of a mini recommendation, so it's not going to be given the full care and attention of the others. But there is a tactics game called Into the Breach, which I think is one of my very, very favorite simple tactics game. You take place on a small battlefield of, normally I think it's 4x4 tiles or 5x5 tiles, and essentially you have some giant mechs, you've got some monsters to kill, and you get a few turns to do it. It's got something like a Jagged Alliance campaign map, where you're going to be trying to take control of territories. A game doesn't last much more than half an hour, if I remember correctly, and is a beautiful pocket-sized tactics game. So if anyone hasn't played Into the Breach, big recommendation from me.
There you go. All right, well, we'll probably go ahead and end it there. I think we talked way a lot longer than I think we thought we were going to, but that's okay. We're good. But if you liked the video, give it a strong, hefty, forceful like. If you don't like the video, you can just press that little down button. That's okay. We're okay with it. We'll live.
Very gently.
Yeah, very gently.
Caress the like button.
And if there is something you didn't like, make sure you tell us in the comments. We love comments of all types. And hit the alert button. That tells you when we either go live or when we have a new video up. That's definitely the way to know that we're there. You will get alerts sometimes from time to time on your little bell that says we were on, but it's on YouTube. Unless you hit that alerts on, there's no sure way of getting it. We hope you have a good day, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.